once again splitting his time this week between the campaign and the courthouse. Trump clashed with the judge in the E. Jean Carroll defamation trial while attending the proceedings here in New York. Meantime, new footage was released this week of Trump's deposition in his civil fraud case and allegations of improper contact against Fulton County DA Fani Willis have shaken up the election interference case in Georgia. Joining me now to talk about all of this is Joe Tacopino. He's the former lawyer of President Donald Trump. And Joe, thank you for being on and joining us. On Monday, you announced you were departing Trump's legal team just days before you were set to represent him in the Carroll case. And this is the first interview you've done since you left the team. You and I have worked together for years on civil rights cases. And I know you as a tenacious, aggressive lawyer. Why would you leave the team?
By the way, it's the first and only interview, Reverend, that I'll be doing on this topic. Okay, you're someone obviously very special to me and someone I have a relationship with, and you know I'm going to discuss it once and only once to the degree I can. I left the team because it was just my time. I had to follow my compass, and my compass told me it was my time there was done. There are a lot of personal reasons that went into that, things that I can and won't discuss. I also have A$AP Rocky's trial coming up this year, which is going to take most of my year. The attention that's going to be put into that case, there's a lot riding on that for that young man, his wife, and his family. But there are personal reasons. And you know, as much as I'd love to discuss them, I just can't, because while I see many lawyers, ex-lawyers of the president, go on television once they're removed from the team or leave the team and discuss him and his legal team and have something to say and criticize everyone around, it's not professional. It's petty ante. It shows a lack of confidence in oneself when you go out there and do that. There's also a fiduciary obligation. So regardless of how I feel personally, I have to stay close to the vest when it comes to the exact personal reasons. Reverend, you and I are very close. We can always talk about that. But I just don't want to be like the lawyers who do things that, in my opinion, make them look very bad and violate what an attorney's privileges mean to a client, whether you are with the client or no longer with the client, whether you like the client or don't like the client. But I just had to follow my compass, and it was my time.
No, well, I don't want you to violate any of your confidentiality, lawyer confidentiality. But when you say you had to go with your compass, obviously some things happened that your compass went a different way than where your compass was when you went in. And you're dealing with probably the most unhinged defendant of all times. Some lawyers say that you never wanted him to take the stand. You know the kind of person he is. I'm not asking you to be specific, but is it your moral compass that kind of like jerked you back into fighting for those of us that we know that you've given a career? I mean, you and I worked on Meek Mill. We worked on many cases, and you go in like a tiger. You're not the kind of person that backed down unless there was a reason you backed down.
And there's a reason, and I have to leave it at that. I love your jacket, by the way. I think it's a spectacular jacket, if you want to talk about
the witness that. Is trying to distract me from the question.
There are reasons, you're right. And I just, if I were to reveal those reasons, look, I'm talking to you and only you. I didn't give any comments to the New York Times this week who wrote articles and everyone else because it just wasn't right. I'm talking to you because of my level of respect for you, and you're the only person I would even have this discussion with. But there were things that just didn't work out for me, that didn't make me want to continue in that role. Nothing, and I have nothing bad to say about anyone because I'm just not going to do that. My own personal thoughts on my.
Well, you do know Donald Trump may have something bad to say about you after coming on my show.
Well, you know, that's okay. That's it's part of the playbook.
All right, then let me ask you this. On Wednesday, the judge in Jean Carroll's case, the second trial, threatened to throw Trump out of the court for being disruptive during witness testimony. Trump has made a point of showing up for many of the recent court dates, even when his presence was not necessary by law. As a lawyer, take you out of the Trump case, do you think Trump is hurting himself with his courtroom behavior, or do you think perhaps his motives are more political than legal?
Oh, they're clearly more political than legal, right? I mean, if you're a lawyer, the last thing you want to do is you want to have happen is your client to take on the judge, especially Judge Kaplan, who's a serious Southern District Federal Court judge, senior judge, who I know very well. I tried multiple cases in front of him. and he doesn't suffer fools, and he doesn't like. He likes very formal proceedings in his courtroom, so he doesn't want a situation where anyone's talking back to him. So I know how that's affecting him, but I also understand that, look, Donald Trump is doing what Donald Trump needs to do to get his message out to his supporters, and it's part of the playbook. I mean, go back to the civil case in Manhattan. It's just how he's chosen to deal with these cases. As a lawyer, obviously, you'd like it to be about the facts and the law, but that's not always an option.
Now, newly made public video footage of Trump's April 2023 deposition to New York Attorney General Letitia James was released just yesterday as part of an ongoing trial that will determine if Trump and his company intentionally misrepresented his net worth when applying for loans. Let me play you a clip.
If I wanted to show you a good statement, I would have added maybe $10 billion or something for the brand. I didn't put the brand in there. I think my brand value is probably my greatest asset, even though it gets tarnished by people like this suing me. I mean, I became president because of the brand, okay? I became president. I think it's the hottest brand in the world.
The hottest brand in the world. He could have added $10 billion. I mean, what goes through your mind when you hear this kind of answer from your former client? I can only imagine what you heard in private when he's such a narcissist.
I didn't represent him in that case, but I will tell you what I think he's saying is that, his brand value adds more to the property value than it would normally if it were owned by me, for example.
But what bank goes by brand value? I mean, it just makes no legal sense.
No, I agree with you. There were some mortgage companies, though, back in the day before he was a polarizing figure, okay, that would have done work with.
Well, you go back
Donald
with
Trump.
me with Central Park 5. He was always a polarizing
I know
figure
that.
me,
I know
go
that.
ahead.
I know that. But I'm just saying there was a point where the Trump real estate name was, in this country very prominent when he was writing his books, The Art of the Deal and all that stuff. And I think lenders were falling over each other to give him money. Look, there's a level of ego that is very high, almost unmatched, I'd say. And whether you like him or hate him, and there are people that sit very strongly on both sides of that fence, the one thing you have to say is his brand has gotten him where he is. I mean, you don't have to like the brand. You don't have to agree with the way he sends his messages out. But his brand did get him into that White House. It wasn't because of his political background or his
He had no
experience.
political background.
Yeah, exactly. That's my
other
point.
than birtherism.
Rev, that's my point. So it had to be the brand. So in that regard, you have to at least acknowledge that his brand got him to where he is. You don't have to like the way he relates.
But in a court of law, he'd have to establish why a bank would do that, particularly when he says himself he didn't put his brand there. And there were many institutions that turned him down, which is why he went to a particular bank. I know you weren't the lawyer on there, but facts are that there were a lot of banks and loaning institutions that were not falling over themselves to embrace his brand or what he was proposing.
Yeah, look, this is a strange case, though, that AG case, because there was no, I mean, the banks that were doing the deals with him made out very well. They profited. He didn't miss any payments. Whether the value was, look, the one thing I know is that they gave a disclaimer when they sent those valuations into the banks to say, this is our real estate assessment, do your own due diligence, which they did. So that case doesn't excite me. That case is not something I think is one of the strong cases. The Manhattan DA's case that I was on, I don't think that's a strong case. There's other cases. There's Georgia, there's Washington, D.C.
You think some of them are strong cases?
Those are serious cases. The two federal cases are serious cases, and I think they're not to be taken lightly. Let's put it that way.
Do you think it is possible, just as a lawyer, you're out of his case, you're back doing what you've been known to do, and you're going to be doing work with all of us again on a lot of cases?
By the way, let me just say that, and that's what, one of the other reasons is this clears the path for us to resume our working relationship, which means the world to me, because you are our country's premier civil rights leader. And to me, to work with National Action Network and be part of your legal team means everything to me. So it's.
Well, I got a lot of work for you because civil rights hasn't gone anywhere.
I know that.
Your
So
former client is not
get
helping.
back.
But let me ask you this: do you think, without violating any principles, knowing that some of these cases are, as you say, serious, is it possible Donald Trump could end up convicted of one of these cases in your mind?
Oh, is it possible? Absolutely. You have a jury of 12 who's going to ultimately decide this. Jack Smith is a federal prosecutor who I knew from his days in Brooklyn. They're serious prosecutors, and these are federal cases. And you have a jury.
And you don't think they're political. You think they're good cases. They're not just politics.
Look, do I think there's a political bent to some of this, some of the way this was gone about? Yes, I do. Do I think these cases are invalid cases? Look, a grand jury voted to indict, and he's going to have to face a jury in Washington, D.C.
4 grand juries.
Yeah, 4. Thank you. Washington, D.C., Florida, and Georgia, and New York City. And, I'd say maybe 3 of those venues are not particularly big Trump venues, right? New York City, Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. So that's going to be, something to really have to grapple with there. And you can't say there's no way he'll get convicted. There's no way, he'll be sentenced.
And they're tough prosecutors that, despite whatever political angle, you don't think would bring cases if they didn't think there was some legal case.
Oh, I'm sure they believe in their cases. Yeah, I do. I'm not going to subscribe unethical conduct on behalf of prosecutors without seeing evidence that they believe in their case. Doesn't mean they're right, by the way, Reverend, but they believe in their case.
Doesn't mean they're wrong either, Joe.
Does not either.